अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाजरीन। नाजरीन, हमेशा की तरह आपकी सहेली, आपकी दोस्त है नाजरीन, जो आपके साथ आज दोबारा से सहेली प्रोग्राम के सेट पर मौजूद है। तो दोस्तों, आज का जो हमारा टॉपिक है वो डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस और डोमेस्टिक अब्यूज़ के हवाले से है, और हमारी जो गेस्ट स्पीकर हैं आज, उनका नाम नजमा बेगम है। नजमा बेगम को 20 साल से ऊपर हो चुका है कि वो डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस और डोमेस्टिक अब्यूज़ के केसेस के हवाले से जो है वो काम करती रही हैं अपनी कम्युनिटी में। तो इंशाल्लाह हम उनसे मज़ीद डिटेल्स इस टॉपिक के हवाले से या मज़ीद जानकारी इस टॉपिक के हवाले से उन्हीं के साथ जो है वो शुरू करते हैं इंशाल्लाह। Good evening and welcome on board, Sister Najma.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, Sister Najma, I reckon you've been working as a social worker for a very, very long time. Would you be able to share your experience of working with the domestic violence victims and domestic abuse?
Okay. Yes, it does go back a long way. I started working in the community from the late 80s, but from the beginning of the 1990s in social work as a frontline social worker, working with children and families, and that involved, supporting a lot of mothers. Majority of the cases were women victims, and it involved, safeguarding work, child protection work, safeguarding the children as well as the mother, the victim, who is subjected to the violence and abuse. Unfortunately, in those days, from the 90s, it's only more recently where we've got the legislations which it goes further beyond covering the aspects of emotional abuse, coercive control, and the impact it has on an emotional level. Before, when in our earlier days, we used to have to see the hard evidence of a bruise or a mark or an injury to the victim, and it was often harder for the women to prove, and there were so many issues of lack of support, the lack of various agencies. It was not readily available, and as a social worker working in frontline child protection cases, mainly because of the very nature of our role, working on protecting the children, the focus has always been on the children, while the secondary aspect is working with the mothers or the victim. So it didn't mean we ignored the need of the mother, but at times when she would say, I want to withdraw my statement, I would don't want to go further with the statement, we didn't have much choice but just to support them. And we would have various panels like MARAC, various other police and social services joint boards where we could look at supporting the victims. But in those days it was harder, but more recently in the last 2 years we've seen so many changes with all the hard work of a lot of campaign organizations. So it has meant that it's much more better, but it's a topic where we can't stop here and say it's done. It's an ongoing topic, and the domestic abuse can happen at any houses or any family structure. It can happen with father and son, son to mother, and normally traditionally it's like husband and wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, cohabiting relationships, but it can happen in other settings. So it is something that is important to raise awareness, for
definitely. And you see in the recent years, we're seeing that there's a slight shift in the domestic violence or abuse aspect as well, in the sense that before it was, as you mentioned, traditionally most of the times it used to be seen between couples or partners. Now the shift is more like towards the sons abusing their parents or mothers specifically. So what do you think is playing a role in that? Domestic violence and abuse is on the rampant, it's on the increase, and we all know that every household has a skeleton in their cupboard. Now, back in the days, it was very difficult to identify and spot, who was suffering until and unless you had any, what would I say, apparent mark on your body to justify, and to prove. So that's basically like, you know, abusing somebody physically. However, the emotional abuse and the mental abuse is very subtle, and it's more like conditioning somebody, so you can't really spot it out straight away. So then this shift, what do you think is the reason in that? As opposed to the traditional domestic violence, now more leaning towards sons abusing parents, and specifically mum. That's one thing that I would want to know from you. The other thing that I would like to know from you is that how can we then identify if somebody is suffering emotional and mental abuse, because it's a bit more subtle.
Okay, yeah, so the question is on the two aspects of it. The main one of them is that there's a shift that you're noticing with mother and son relationship.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the other aspect is the question on how do you identify it and how do we, you know, look out for it and how do we support. So first question, I appreciate, it's important to understand. I think that pattern could be as a result of various numbers of incidents where it could be mother and son is in a single family, single parent, you know, family unit, where the father has left for one reason or another, or mother decided to break out of the abusive relationship, or it could be just the fact that, you know, she's become widowed or single for various reasons. So the mother is raising the son, and she's having to be the father and the mother. So there's roles of disciplining and putting boundaries and having to say no to certain things. And as young men growing up, there are so many opportunities and so many influences outside peer pressure to, you know, misuse, abuse their pocket money and go further beyond to get into the wrong crowd. So as a mother, she's having to be firm and put in the boundaries, and at times some mothers don't realize it until it gets too late, when they get too aggressive. Initially they may put up with it, thinking that, you know, the son, you know, might be just acting out and things will improve, and so initially she may just give in to it and, you know, allow that to happen in terms of demanding money or demanding, you know, or being aggressive if, you know, she's asking, where have you been, or where did you get this, if they're coming home with, you know, these large expensive items. So there's a lot of confrontation that goes on, and then, you know, they would be gradually looking into using the knives, or they're getting into the wrong crowd, or the police are calling on the door. So obviously mother is having to challenge. So when the mother is alone, you know, it can be an issue of physical, you know, size as well. The son could be tall, the mother could be like petite. So there's a different dynamics of the power of having that command and that mother and son relationship, where the respect and the boundaries are broken, where, you know, and the mother could feel, you know, frightened by this.
So basically, as much as bless the mother is concerned, and she's trying to, you know, bring the goodness out in her child, just so that even if he is in the bad crowd, bad company, you know, she's giving him gentle reminders so he can pull himself out and then go back onto the straight path. And in the course of time, in order to just bring him back on the right path, she's, in his eyes, becoming a bad cop. Hence the reason that he retaliates and tries to have a go back at the mother, because he feels in his mind that she's somebody who's putting a stop or a limit to his lifestyle, if you like. So
there's other aspects of it where, you know, the mother could be new to the country. So, you know, it could be that the norms and the traditions and the values, and because of the language barrier, they may rely on the son, you know, because the son is going to school and getting a better level of education than the mother. So she might be misinformed by the son, or even like school, you know, if they're truanting, there may be a letter, they may just throw it, or they may not show it to the mother. So there's so many aspects of parenting as well. So the disposition could be the fact that they've got lack of, you know, knowledge in terms of language, or reading letters and reports from school, and lack of awareness that they could get into the wrong crowd if they are slightly late from school or en route to school. There could be issues of the mother having mental health issues, her own, issues of domestic violence, and it's haunting her, and her recovery process could be very, very long, and a lot of symptoms, depression can make her weak from being the mother being on form to do all that parenting. So there's various factors of that could make a mother unable to practice her role as a mother.
Yeah. So then why do sons or boys or male gender try to harass and abuse their mums? Why do they not do it to their older siblings who are brothers, or why do they not do it to their fathers?
Yeah, I think it can be again the socialization process and what they see. So within the relationship, well, as the child was growing up, they may have witnessed the domestic violence, the aggression, or it could be like a mother who hasn't suffered. It could be widowed, mother. So it could be the outside influences. The games. They're playing games, and most of the games are 18 rated. But how many of us do get to check whether it is appropriate or not? They're playing the games. It could be that they're playing in the bedroom, and most of the computer games are nowadays all about killing, violence, and how many people they can shoot down, and there's different levels of violence.
They're basically conditioning the children.
That's it.
And
So
parents
the
are just
aggression,
thinking,
and
parents
they can act out on it afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. Because parents are thinking, or that mother who is herself going through a lot of socially and emotionally turbulent phase, she's thinking, as long as my children are within the boundaries of the house, they're safe, they're okay, I can see them, they're in their room, they're playing. But she doesn't know that it's a totally different wide world out there. Whilst you are in your house, you cannot be safe. So it's very, very important, to highlight this fact that parents need to know what the children are watching online. Because through the internet we're globally connected, and if the content is obviously not child friendly, then we can't really guarantee nothing,
That's right.
And then obviously in retrospect the children have no boundaries set, and on top of that, if they're getting into a bad crowd, bad company, then they're going to go places, God forbid. So it's really sad to see that on one side the mother is already going through an emotionally turbulent phase. She hasn't even, completed her healing process. She's on that journey. And then obviously it varies from one person to another, how long their healing journey, carries on. And most of the time, the women don't even know that they've fallen into the trap of DV and DA. And for them, hence, they can't even find what they stand for, what is their ground. So forget about the healing.
Yes,
they're suffering, they're living their life with the same baggage throughout their lifetime, as long as they're alive, and then on top of that they're suffering more pressure from the children as well. So subhanallah.
So going on to that as well, for the mother or the victim, there's so many within our community. I can say the communities we come from, there is a lot of social expectation, a lot of honor based issues, the norms, and the aspects of a woman seeking independence, seeking their rights, can be seen as breaking out of the norm. And being empowered could be seen as being breaking out of the norm. Rebellious and getting all that label. So it's about people being aware of their rights and being able to act on it, and knowing what is domestic abuse or domestic violence.
What is the difference between both of them anyway?
The way it is the abuse that covers the wider aspect of abuse, which is not only the violent aspect of it. So it'll be emotional, the coercive control, the behaviors within the opposite partner who's controlling and who's abusing. So it could be just the odd comments, the belittling words, the taunting, the teasing. It could be like initially like a banter, and then it can form into like it's the drip effect, accumulative effects of just a slight little tease or little negative words, or you fat so and so, you stupid person, or this that. So it's all that negative. So that emotional abuse can form into a big factor, and it can cause domestic, emotional abuse can go into a cycle of mental health and depression, and with the violence, where that's again domestic violence, is where you can see the violence, and it's all an action based, and the injuries there, and there may be evidence through the bruising and getting all that checked. And I was going to also mention about the next phase of how do you notice and how do you detect if it's someone in the community. And there are obviously various organizations, and the police also, they can come out and assess in a very, very subtle way. And they some extreme cases where they can put detectors in the house, inside the house, but obviously as a victim, they need to be strong enough to be able to work with the domestic violence police support unit.
So will the perpetrator know that there are cameras fitted in or detectors in the house?
No, it would be, if it's very high level case, it's meant to be hidden, and but initial stages of noticing it and reporting it, basically it's only when neighbors can hear the shouting abuse, or there can be even some cases I've worked on where the woman has been sponsored in this country. She's had about 3 or 4 kids, and still she doesn't even get out of the house on her own. And even the bins are, put out by the husband. So, and she's controlled, and her phones are checked, and she, she's not able to make any calls on her own accord, and that's how controlling it can be. So, when there are some families when you may know in the community, and that comes across as very, very upset and very worried about going home on time, and there could be some signs that they seem to be very, very fearful of what the partner's going to think.
So say, for example, if there is a
they
sister...
come to a party, neighbours, that's it, and then, they'll be saying, oh, it's 8 o'clock, I must be...
So fear, basically, fear is, could be one sign of somebody being mentally and emotionally abused. That they're controlled.
And also they may not, be completely in tune with, as a woman, they may not freely be talkative to you. There may be a withdrawn behavior where they don't feel they can trust anyone to talk, and also the fear of the husband finding out that you've got a female friend, that you're going to be empowered or given knowledge, and also being able to go out other than family events. So there could be that they're fearful of the husband finding out, and if the husband is the violent partner, they will not want the woman to be engaging with outsiders in case they know their rights and learn their rights.
It's interesting to see the way, the patterns, the way men try to control women and try to abuse them mentally and emotionally. Say if we had to reverse the role and the woman had to abuse the man, how successful would she be, in order to keep that man indoors, just the way men are able to do it?
Yeah, I've actually, I know we are talking about domestic violence and domestic abuse. Being a social worker for, having worked for nearly, 30 years, there has been the odd cases of domestic violence and domestic abuse within our men. And it's good to mention that, because there is a certain percentage of men who are victims of domestic abuse and violence, and it's often more of abuse because probably the woman is not hitting on the man, and because of the physical difference and the strength, she is more abusive in the form of being taunting and being verbally abusive and controlling. And sometimes it could be the imbalance of intelligence and cognitive abilities. So the husband might have a mild or moderate learning difficulty, and the woman might be average intelligence, and with that kind of a level of control and manipulation and I've actually worked with one particular Muslim male where it was more about the community, again about the honor, and it's about declaring, and it's the masculinity issue that as a man, how do I say that I'm being abused by a woman? it's more of a shame. They feel that it's an insult to their
he's a coward,
gender. That's it. So it's more harder for them to speak up. Whereas for a woman, it's easier because the society and in general, like by the nature of physical abilities, they can say yes. A woman can be more vulnerable if a man just lays the slap or whatever. But so for a man, psychologically, to declare it, to open up, is more difficult. And the amount of years that family has been known to social services, cuts across like 3 decades as well. And every time the cases, get worked on, families are children are being supported as they grow. But then, there's another referral. But we go in and then we still ask, how are you? Do you need any support? He is remaining silent. And as an adult, it's the issue of making a statement, and majority of the time, because of the justice system, the way we work on evidence and witness statements, and because he hasn't got an injury, it doesn't go forward.
How can you prove that he is being abused?
Yes. So there are some women out there as well who can be abusive.
Another example we can take is of immigrants who are new into this country.
Yes.
And basically the woman might have been born and bred here and she's fully aware of her rights, whereas the other party isn't.
Yes.
So there is a bit of a gap whereby I've seen that women tend to abuse men and use them as a domestic staff in the house. And obviously one element that you've covered already would be that they're not mentally compatible. The intellectual capacity or the emotional capacity is not there. There is no bonding, and then perhaps in their mind already they've decided that, okay, we're having this person on board from another country, XYZ, wherever that they've come from, just for the sake of using them and abusing them for our own convenience. So if they've already set their mind on that, then obviously we all know where it's heading towards. So it's sad that for just to in order just to be able to justify their own ego and their nafs, people can go to these lens.
Yes, I think that's one of the reason, I suppose, the government has been working hard in terms of the Home Office and the issues of forced marriage and the marriages happening from one country to another. They are sort of being more vigilant in terms of the qualifications and whether the marriage is genuine. They need to evidence it when they apply for entry. And I think our parents are getting more understanding of the need to make sure that the partner, whether it's a woman or a man, they are compatible and they can stand on their ground. And if they had studied back home, whichever country they're from, MA level or degree level, at least they can start maybe one step behind, even at a degree level or at a basic level, work. Whereas if they're coming in without the education, for them to start from scratch in this country is very difficult.
Challenging.
So it is important for having, the appropriate levels of matching, when
balance,
when we're doing the introductions to marriage or families going out to get a bride or a groom. It's very important to have that, and also the maturity. And that's why we have that in place now, the forced marriage orders and various remedies.
I mean, specifically in the forced marriage situations, what I've seen is that most of the times it's not the husband or the couple themselves, it's the extended family that puts pressure. For example, the mother-in-law or the father-in-law would be more controlling. They would want their daughter-in-law to behave in a certain way. They just have this avatar in their mind that this is what she looks like, this is what she needs to do, this is how she needs to sleep, this is how she needs to talk. And if she comes on board and she's not somebody who's even close to what they've decided or have an image of her in their mind, then it's like a totally game changer. And the same people who've taken her on board and winged her and married off their son to her, so basically now your generation is going to get extended through that woman. That same very woman that you've given the respect to become a part of your family and now exists as a daughter-in-law, you're now, on the verge of reversing the role, in the sense that now you're abusing her, you're controlling her, you're doing all sorts. So then, is there any law prevalent in place which extends to the family members and extended family members as well when it comes to DV and DA?
Yes, I have again, come across these cases where, like one example I was saying, the daughter-in-law, she's ended up having the third child, autistic and disability needs, and for her to not be able to get out of the house, even though she did up to degree level. I know for a case, in London, where it came to a point where mother-in-law was interfering.
Wow.
As well, and it came to a point where she did build up her strength and to tell the family and get the police involved. So yes, there is intervention. The police can ask the violent partner to move, or the woman, if she's suffering and if there's evidence, for her to move with the children. And obviously, there are cases where the woman who may come from back home, and even if she had been educated, there's that pride thing, the honor thing, so about breaking away from marriage. So because of that reason, she had stayed and had, like the third child, and been in the marriage for 10 years. So, there are cases where women do try to work it out, but then there's a point where they need to break out. So there are remedies where, when she seeks out the help, they can get the police involved. And
so what would be the process like? Say somebody is suffering domestic violence and they've finally made a decision that no, they need to step up and break this pattern, they want to get out. Who should be their first point of contact?
Normally, there are some community organizations, like there are various organizations within even where we are in the Midlands.
Where do you operate from, Sister Najma?
Yes, okay, I'm in Tyseley. It's 588 Warwick Road, Tyseley, and I'm a founder of EPIC, which stands for Empower, Promote, Inspire Consultancy, and the idea is to work on safeguarding, and because of my work has been all along, my roles have been along road safety, community development, and social work, child protection, safeguarding. Over the years, having worked in local government for so many years, I felt this would be quite rewarding for me as well, to be approached by the community members on different topics.
So could you be, or your organization, be the first point of contact?
Yes, they could contact me, or there's other organizations within the community, like the Women's Aid. There's helplines, there's various other organizations who they can approach, and it could be because of the GDPR and protecting them. There's the confidentiality is the highest of assurance and priority, and their safety would be important. So the process would be it'll be done through working with referrals to the police. And if there's children involved, there will be a need to refer to the children's services. But at the first point, the person who comes to you obviously needs to hear what their options are, and they will need to also decide. And we as professionals, I'm an independent social worker, so as a social worker, there are certain secrets I can't keep. If someone is vulnerable and they come and ask me for advice, and they say not to tell the police, it would be an issue where I would have to put it back to them to say, my role is to inform the police if they need to be safeguarded, and if a child or a vulnerable person needs to be safeguarded. So, it's up to, individuals how they approach it. But we, as for adults, we give them the option to have a think and come back, and it depends on the severity. So that's how it is. And again, the police do obviously rely on the witness, and if it's emotional, that's the issue where we need to build up the it may not be an instant referral to the police. So we may say, if it's just the little incidents, that drip incidents, we may say that they keep a private diary, or like a private log of the incidents, and which that can help. Or if they go to the community center on a weekly basis, they can give a little update on how things are. And then eventually through that process there may be enough evidence, and through some discussions with the police they may feel they've got enough evidence and they may want to take it further.
Okay, so say first step would be that the person informs or contacts the organizations like yourself.
Yes.
Then they set up an appointment and they come over to yours, or somebody from your organization would go to their house.
Well, we can do it all neutral. We have to maintain that independence as well as the neutrality, in case the perpetrator comes onto the site, comes at home, then what do they say? And it could create havoc, and without the safeguarding plan.
So does that mean that you will have to select a place, a public place?
Yes. Obviously, the way we jointly work with the police, there are certain things we can't disclose. But the main thing is protecting the victim. How we facilitate that process for them to be empowered and to make that decision to go forward.
Right. Okay. So now the first step is to contact organizations like yourself and meet up and then be able to explain what they're going through. And in that first meeting, then the key worker is going to be deciding whether they're vulnerable, they need to be referred to the police straight away or not. Obviously, you need to ensure the safeguarding and everything, get their consent, and then, if they're ready, then obviously you refer them. Or if they're ready, for that matter, they can contact the police themselves if they've reached that point whereby they think, no, we're done with this now and it's getting nowhere, and it's just so bad that we need to call the police, and they can contact them.
It can be done as a outsider, like being in the community. You could be a community member and you might notice that this particular victim is suffering, but they're not openly coming to you or asking you, and you have seen visual evidence of some bruising or some other incidents, and that you have got direct information that this person is controlling for 6 months or even a year or so. You can report as an anonymous. Yes, so there is that option.
Okay, so then how serious does the police take such situations when somebody's anonymously calling them? How are they going to go and check on?
It can be done because usually there's the West Midlands Now police website where people can track their referral of concern. Online, it could be just logged on your phone. You can just report an incident. And there will be a trail, so people can make a call and register the concerns, and then you can call back and ask for an update. If that victim has been seen to. So there is a process to find out whether they have followed it up or not.
So I'm just thinking maybe this would work as a blessing in disguise, that if a woman can't make up her own mind to basically snitch behind her husband and go and inform the police or the social worker, maybe one of her friends can just anonymously ring and inform the police, and when the police comes at the door, obviously that woman can express that, I don't know why have they come, where they've come from, so she's basically able to save her skin.
That's right.
Maybe that brings a little bit of a shame and fear factor in that man's mind, and then he stops doing what he's been doing, and maybe their relationship gets improved to a certain level.
There's obviously there's the next level of like remedies. There's within the more updated law, there are remedy order, there's various other intervention which doesn't mean that they have to break away from the marriage or go for separation or divorce. There's a lot of intermediary services, and there's mediation, there's support packages where there could be support workers going in and also doing family therapy, family mediation, working out what are the triggers, what causes the partner to lose their temper, and also for the man, he may not realize that even the subtle, taunting, subtle, comments as being abusive, because they may have grown up in a environment where they had their siblings or elders, talk to them in that way, or have little family banters. It's a pattern
that keeps repeating, isn't it?
That's right, and their father, their older brothers may have treated them like that, and they may say, oh, it didn't do me any harm. But for another person, it could be that drip effect, and they may be more emotionally more sensitive. So it could be that working through that issue. It may be nipped in the bud, you know, at a lower scale. And these different therapies, which through my organization, I can identify the specialist services where it could be one-to-one mentoring, one-to-one counseling to the, you know, abusive partner or the victim about, you know, how to empower themselves and become more confident. So there are different services that can be used, as well as obviously once the police are involved, if there's hard evidence, then it could probably go through the court system and then the criminal justice system. But then still there are hope. You know, there is hope through the probation type services. There's IDFA. They call it independent domestic abuse advisor. So these vulnerable people and the abusers can get the support as well for rehabilitation back into the community. And also, if there's no risk at home, if the injuries and abuse wasn't that severe and the social services deemed that the abusive partner can return home, then, you know, it might be that the social services are involved, but they do child protection plan or child in need plan, and they come visiting the family for a few years, and then, you know, work on some parenting classes and how it impacts on the children as well, because that's the issue, isn't it? The children get, you know, to suffer.
Absolutely.
And they're like the silent, you know, victims. And, you know, it can just be forgotten at times as well. And as adults, when they go through divorce and breakups, the children can be used for various, you know, reasons of their dispute. And, you know, there's different, you know, topics and different labels, you know, they call it parental alienation syndrome. So it can be done by both parents without knowing the impact it's going to have on the child. So it's not as if they're going out to maliciously impact on the children.
It just happens unconsciously. They're both so busy in their own run of the mill that they don't realize children are suffering at the end.
And the child could be told, oh, your dad didn't do this, or your dad didn't do that.
And that's the worst thing we can do, especially as mothers, you know, when we feel we're in the, you know, turmoil, in a weak moment, you know, we're not that resilient, we just take it out and blur everything out in front of the children. That shouldn't be done.
And it's, again, it's their identity. If it's you're tormenting or you're, you know, saying to the child, the son,
about their
oh,
father
your dad
or
is this, your dad is this,
Yeah.
then in a way,
Identity crisis
that's
as
it.
well.
And it's like he's going to reflect back and, oh, my dad's like that. And then he's not going to see it as any better. So he may internalize that. And as a daughter, if the dad is saying that constantly to the daughter, or you're like your mom, you're like mom. So imagine what's going to happen to the daughter.
Excellent. Right, Sister Najma, thank you so much for sharing such valuable information with us. Jazakallah khair for coming on board. जी नाजरीन, तो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह सिस्टर नजमा ने हमारे साथ कुछ बहुत ही मुफीद इंफॉर्मेशन शेयर की है. मैं ये दुआ करती हूँ कि इंशाल्लाह किसी के भी घर में डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस और डोमेस्टिक अब्यूज़ के जो केसेस अगर कभी हुए हैं तो अल्लाह ताला हम सब की जो है वो हिदायत फरमाए. और फ्यूचर के लिए हमें ये सोचना चाहिए कि हम जब शादियां करते हैं और हम निकाह जब पढ़ाया जाता है अरबी के अंदर या इंग्लिश के अंदर, तो उसका बेसिकली मकसद यही होता है कि हम एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट साइन करते हैं अल्लाह सुब्हान ताला के साथ कि या अल्लाह आपने हमें ये इंसान जो है वो हमारी अमानत में दे दिया है और हम आपकी खातिर जो है वो इस बंदे का ख्याल करेंगे और रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लेंगे. तो आगे जाके जब हम इन मसलों को सॉल्व नहीं करते तो बेसिकली इन रेट्रोस्पेक्ट क्या हो रहा होता है कि हम अल्लाह के सामने जो है वो अकाउंटेबल होते हैं. तो हम अल्लाह को क्या मुंह दिखाएंगे जब हम वापस जाएंगे कि हमने जो वादा रब के साथ किया था उसको पूरा करने में हम कहाँ तक जो है वो सक्सेसफुल रह चुके हैं. तो इसका इम्पैक्ट जो है ऑब्वियसली आपके बच्चों के ऊपर भी पड़ता है. जनरेशंस अपॉन जनरेशंस जो है वो ये इम्पैक्ट चलता रहता है. तो इंशाल्लाह जो है वो अगले हफ्ते दोबारा आपके साथ मुलाकात होगी. तब तक के लिए इजाज़त चाहती हूँ. अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम.